Path of Night is an actual play Vampire the Masquerade podcast set in the world of darkness. We're all friends, we're here to have fun, but our story can include graphic violence, drug use, sexual content, and other mature themes. Content warnings can be found in the show notes. We talk at our table about safety, comfort, and consent, both as players and storytellers. We know what to expect, we're all excited to be here, and we want you to feel the same. So listener discretion is advised. Now let's walk the Path of Night.
Last time on Path of Night, Miles bloodbound Wynn as she slept. Wynn woke and confronted him. Ultimately, Wynn was bound a second time. Wynn attempted to convince Johnny to choose to spend Gehenna with his family. Johnny refused, choosing instead the family he has now. Britta woke starving and mutually bloodbound to Pendragon, and just barely managed to get away. Johnny found Britta, and they found Neil, just before the Coterie was summoned to two separate meetings. Forced to make a choice between Justicar Lucinda and Prince Roman Pendragon, the Coterie splits. Wynn alone goes to meet Lucinda, bound by blood to the Justicar a second time.
She shuts the door, and she'll take her phone out of her pocket and look at the time.
You lost about 5 minutes.
Okay. And she will... All right, where the fuck am I going? Fuck. And she just starts going downstairs. She figures, last time, if I wandered enough, I wound up near where Miles was. So let's just go on instinct. I'm already near the bitch. So let's just keep wandering. She does say all this out loud. And she just starts heading for stairwells and going down stairs.
As you head for a stairwell, you actually will see that by one of the stairwells is actually a whole ass elevator that is arranged, and waiting at the elevator is your Coterie.
Hello. Wynn here.
Hey.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, nice to see you.
I'm okay. I'm just really hungry.
Yup. I know the look.
And
refreshments are being provided.
That's what they said. And now that we're here, I look around for the elevator guy. Can we?
Right this way.
Okay.
He slides a key into a pad by the elevator and turns the key, taps a few digits on the pad, and the elevator doors open. This way. Each of you get onto the elevator. He selects the option B2. The elevator door closes, and you descend.
How many options for basement are on this elevator?
It looks like there are 3 options for basement and 4 options for actual floors to the building, or the haven.
Miles nods his head in appreciation.
How far would we fall? I don't want to think about it right now.
If the elevator falls, lie down.
It's a little crowded in here, Wynn.
I'll make room for you.
Okay. Neil presses the B2 button a couple more times in that way that anyone who wants the elevator to hurry up just mindlessly presses the button. It does nothing.
Wynn kind of puts a hand on his shoulder and squeezes it's going to be okay.
I'm not scared of elevators usually. I just want us to get where we're going.
I know.
Johnny, when the elevator doors open, you'll notice that a lot of the walls here are reinforced. This is very much like a bomb shelter down here. And you are reminded that the Bruja in many domains have had histories of building what they would call castles. And it'd be just these fortified locations that the clan can rally when things get bad. And judging by the care and consideration put into this space, you start kind of getting the feeling that when Roman Pendragon needs to rally and be at a secure location that he absolutely controls and can defend, this is it. You're greeted by 4 more of Roman Pendragon's men, and the Coterie is escorted down these long halls and into a room that is mostly file cabinets, a safe set into the wall that's pretty large. There are weapons on racks, artifacts hailing from various points of the Roman Empire, and a table. Normally, these kinds of meeting tables are arranged so that the seats are spaced evenly and the table is clear, but this time there are files everywhere, and it is a mess. And on this table, Neil, you recognize this old-looking, almost grimoire. And you recognize this because you catch a word, and you see the word Gehenna. And as the group of you draw near, you start seeing files, and these files all seem to have references at different parts of the globe, various cities. And the ones that are open, you see sometimes unusual images, reports on strange happenings.
Does this almost look like a combination of the files that were in Jan Petersoon's safe house in New York, the weird shit that Katerina had in her apartment?
This looks like the files from Jan Petersoon's location.
Okay.
But opened up and splayed everywhere to be read.
Like the same files?
Like the same files.
Neil just blurts out, "Oh, I've seen those."
Is Pendragon here?
Pendragon is looking over the table, arms crossed, and it looks like he's been pondering something for maybe as long as he's been awake tonight.
Where did those... Miles, those are your sire's files.
Johnny looks to the member of Pendragon's army that brought us here and gives him a withering gaze and says, "Refreshments."
He looks to Pendragon. Pendragon just nods. And he quickly excuses himself.
So why have we been summoned here, Pendragon?
I have questions. And it would seem that the group of you might have answers.
Seeing all the files and the book that said Gehenna, which I'm going to take might be fragments of the Book of Nod or something like that, Neil is already lost in it. Despite the fact that he usually shies away from Pendragon or anyone of power like that, has walked over to the table and is just staring at all of it, like his mind going a million places at once, and is just looking at all of it. Barely seems to hear Pendragon or the rest of your conversation.
Fire away. We'll see what we can do. But we do
Fire away. How very cavalier.
I've been accused of that on more than one occasion.
2 young women, maybe a little older than Britta, make their way into the room, and they sort of have their heads facing down, and they kneel down on the cold floor and simply wait to be devoured.
Britta winces. She looks over to Johnny, barely keeping herself together. She's still looking at him for help for that. She is almost... Her body is starting to, sidle towards the source.
I won't let you drink too deep.
Eyes wide, Britta nods, and she dips her head to Pendragon, to the man who brought the women in, and says, "Thank you." She goes over to one of them.
One moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
What are your willpower scores? And this is for the purposes of using a presence effect.
Gotcha.
So, Johnny, add your +2 from Ironheart to this.
I'm willpower 10, so +2 from Ironheart, 12.
Due to the effects of psychic assault, Britta has 4 willpower.
Does Iron Will also come up?
Nope. Okay. It's just straight up presence. Johnny is oblivious to what's going on. Mm-hmm. It does not affect him in the slightest. Britta.
Mm-hmm.
You frenzy on one of the Nelt girls, rushing to devour her immediately.
Johnny will snatch her up and hold her in a lock.
Now, before we get there, Johnny, I still need you to make a self-control check against the opportunity to feed. Your self-control is difficulty 4. If you succeed on this roll, you can absolutely snatch up Britta. I'm not even going to have you roll for it. But first, we have to make sure that
You're not occupied.
it's not inmates running the prison here.
I'm limited by my my blood pool.
Yes.
Difficulty 4, you said?
Difficulty 8.
8.
Yes, it's harder because you're a Bruja.
I'll spend a willpower.
Understood.
1 success.
Due to the willpower.
Johnny will snatch her up in a lock.
Britta is by no means strong, but she is slippery. And in her frenzied state, she is doing what she can to get to feed, to get to the source, to get what the beast needs.
Why don't you give me a Dex plus Brawl roll
Oh no.
against Johnny's Strength plus Brawl?
I don't think graceful applies in frenzy, but you could tell me I'm wrong.
It does not. You are not graceful right now.
Then I believe it is 6 successes.
8 successes to hold you in place.
With Britta securely in Johnny's arms, Wynn will step in front of her.
Johnny will do you one better. He will actually take her head in hand and turn her head to face you.
And Wynn will put on her best mom voice and say, "Stop," in an attempt to get her out of frenzy.
Okay. Spend 1 willpower and go ahead and roll.
1 success.
Britta, you hear the mom voice. You see the beautiful seagull eyes that meet yours. And she calms you. And for the first time tonight, you feel like your beast is not going to just throw you down and take over. You feel confident now that you can do this.
Britta's grip on Johnny feels more steadied, more human, despite the coldness that can leach out under her gloves from her hands. And you feel her body relax. You see her eyes focusing in on Wynn.
Atta girl.
Johnny's grip does not change. He holds you strong and fast and is completely implacable.
We're going to do this as a team, okay?
Okay.
All right, Johnny, bring her over.
Johnny looks over to Pendragon. What kind of look is he giving all of this?
I was actually going to ask that because I'm like right by the table near him.
Roll perceptions plus empathy.
2 successes.
Do either of my specs in intuitive or my empathy spec in emotions count?
You may apply emotions.
Okay. I have 5 successes.
There is a very professional air of confidence coming from him. It is as though he is simply waiting for the Coterie to be ready for this conversation. Details on how the group of you get there seem irrelevant to him.
Johnny bodily hauls you over to one of the blood dolls.
Britta's not resisting in the slightest. She seems to feel more secure by that.
And in a voice, and you're not sure whether he's speaking to you or the blood doll, he just says, "Gently now."
Britta checks in with Wynn
It's okay. You got this.
and goes to feed.
The girl tilts her head to the side. She seems experienced with this sort of thing. And the blood doll gives herself over to you, allowing you to take as much as you will.
Due to Wynn bolstering Britta in this moment, Britta will take 3 blood.
She makes this nearly inaudible gasp as the kiss takes her. And slowly, she falls asleep in your grasp.
After she's taken 3, Johnny will put his hand on your jaw to stop you from taking any more.
And Britta immediately jolts away, taking only the moment to make sure the wound is licked and that she's not jostling the girl in her sleep.
Johnny then lets you go, looks at you, and looks at the other blood doll, just like that, gently again.
What about you?
Johnny just gives you a look like, do not disagree with me.
Britta immediately folds under the tone of Johnny's dad stare and goes over to the other girl.
She tilts her head to the side, exactly like the last girl did.
And that takes Britta a moment. The reminder For the first girl, she was almost reveling in the calm, the relief from the drumming of the beasts, and that little hint of horror takes Britta a second.
Yeah, her makeup is perfect. Her hair is perfect. Excellent perfume. She's dressed very fashionably. She is well cared for, but there is no doubt in your mind this girl is cattle.
There's guilt in the way that Britta lays her hand on this girl, brushing perfumed hair out of the way. But she will sink her fangs in all the same.
After she's taken 3 vitae, Johnny will put his hand on her shoulder.
Thank you, Johnny.
We don't have any awareness that any disciplines or anything were used here, right? It just seems like Britta went nuts.
Yep.
Out of hunger. Okay.
Does that include me?
You just remember looking at them hungrily and then losing control.
Wynn watches as Johnny refuses the blood doll, and there's no judgment. She gets it. He's a dad. These are young girls. She's still worried because there's no doubt Pendragon's gonna say some shit because he always fucking does. And Johnny's hungry and he's gonna say some shit because he's got a short fucking fuse when he's hungry and on days that end in Y. And so she kind of walks up to him and kind of like knocks on his hip bone. Just one of her weird ways of touching people. And she kind of turns her forearm out to him, offering.
Johnny just leans in a little bit, kind of pressing a shoulder to shoulder against with Wynn. And kind of leans in, taps foreheads with her, and then kind of goes back to standing up, just kind of straight.
She gives this a nod, respecting his choice, but she does stay close to him. Like, in case something pops off, she wants to be able to be there to try and grab him.
Looks of gratitude to Johnny, to Wynn. She's finally okay. She can finally focus, and she finally feels more like herself.
Johnny looks over to Pendragon, and then down at the blood dolls. And with a quick side glance at one of Pendragon's men. Your Grace, thank you for the refreshments. If you would indulge the humanity of your guests and allies, it would be appreciated that these two be escorted peaceably from here.
He gives a nod, and the Bruja that actually escorted you guys down here heads over to the 2 girls, and he just kind of picks them up. Not like dragging them off or anything, but, lifts them, and he will actually leave the room with them.
Johnny watches him go and kind of frowns at that. He is very concerned that they will simply be cast aside once out of view, but he nods in thanks to Pendragon.
Now, on to matters of importance. It would seem that the Inner Circle has been hiding crucial information regarding ongoings across the globe. He kind of paces as he starts to think. He's normally just very collected, but as he starts to bring this up, you can feel the way this news is causing his patience to wither.
Britta had been looking actually in Neil's direction. Something that he had said earlier seems to be kind of on the edge of her mind, like she's not sure where that would lead, but at the words Inner Circle, she looks over at Miles.
He's paying attention, but it's a weird position to put in because his sire was super against the stuff getting out, so seeing where this goes.
Britta kind of tilts her head, wondering if there will be what's like Miles's expression about that phrase. Hesitancy?
He's waiting to see what's happening next. He's still waiting to see what's going on.
I was promised that when the next election came to determine who would serve in the position of Justicar, the role of Justicar of the Bruja would be mine. But it would seem that I was lied to. That Hardestad and his circle think they could use me as they use you. I don't know that I meant to return from New York.
Everything we've seen so far, unless more is done, New York is going to be enveloped by something horrible and beyond imagination.
Explain to me the more that needs to be done. How can it be killed?
We don't know yet. So we were working on before we weren't allowed to. Before all of this and the Sabbat and all the distractions that are happening.
What do you know so far? His eye twitches at the laughter.
Neil, basically from the moment he was like, more things are going on, from the moment he started talking, frankly, Neil has tried to keep a very hard lock on any form of the no shit dude, welcome to the club, like look crossing his face. I mean, where do we start? And he looks around at the others, actually specifically looking back over at Miles, knowing that this is the kind of thing that we've talked about in private, but he like needs a cue.
The last thing that I remember us discussing is that Arabella and her coven, and it looks like probably Zacharias Slane at this point, are looking into a way to utilize magic to banish the eldest to outside of reality last time I checked.
Except we know that at least the plan to send it to the Shadowlands...
Not the Shadowlands.
...would not work, right? So...
They were saying outside of all reality.
Yeah, that
I don't know what that means.
But the Shadowlands plan had already been shown that it would fail, that it already exists in the Shadowlands.
Same with the
realm of spirits.
What is it?
What?
It's the shard of the oldest Tzimisce, the
Can we just... He looks...
antediluvian.
Thank you. He looks at the Book of Nod fragments. I mean, if this is here, can we just use words?
It was a piece carried over by a ghoul servant.
The Xantosa
Revenants.
family.
Right. The one in New York, I'm not entirely sure, but the one that exists just outside of New Haven was brought here by the Xantosa family.
The big piece in New York was also brought over by the Xantosa family. The smaller piece in New Haven that destroyed the Chantry in Yale is also a piece of the eldest, also moved and was under the caretaking of Vito Xantosa.
This is what Shaw was involved in investigating.
Yes.
The reason that your sire wanted him removed.
Shaw was making dealings with the Xantosa.
This is Jan Peterzoon's stuff, right? Like his... I'm asking out of character.
Yes.
I look through like the fragments in the book and stuff for the specific pages we got from Shaw.
You can find them in there.
I flip to it and I sort of tap on them. Yes, these were the ones we took from Shaw and we sent to the Archon.
Did my sire give you all of this?
No,
Where did this come from?
your sire.
So the operative word is give.
Yes.
It was taken and it doesn't matter right now.
Your sire
Okay.
stood in the way of the inner circle. Intentionally, by accident. It doesn't much matter. What matters is that his sire no longer had need of his services.
He
Britta,
was supposed to have left. He was on his way out.
Indeed, he is gone.
Wynn moves away from Johnny toward Miles.
you can see Britta kind of shrink, and that thing that was on the edge of her mind when she was looking at Neil earlier, it's clearly that his mention that this was Jan Peterson's notes is really the truth of the matter, and she makes herself smaller looking at the floor.
It is plain to me now that this siege is no true threat to the Camarillan as a whole. The Inner Circle doesn't fear the Sabbat. They do not understand the threat that it represents, but they do see the opportunity to address the various loose ends that have sprung up in this region of their kingdom.
Xavier said it. Neil looks over at Wynn. Isn't that right? Hardestat would sacrifice all of North America to keep his secrets? Something like that? Something close to that?
Yes, that's what he said.
So, yeah.
Johnny has just been staring at Pendragon this whole time. And upon hearing this, has just been kind of looking at the floor. And then looks over to Miles. And just kind of stares at him, kind of getting an assessment of where he's at.
What's your involvement with removing Jan?
I tore his head from his body.
Why?
Crushed his skull in my hands. I did so because the Camarillan asked me to. I was offered exemption for one of yours.
And Britta looks like she's guilty and scared.
Your sire is dead, so that Britta might live.
But you've learned things now.
I do not see these things as connected. One was a transaction. When I dealt with him, I found all of this packed away. It would seem that he was planning to flee.
He was planning to deal with the eldest.
There's nothing in here that represents a solution.
He was on his way. That was part of it.
There is... Neil looks over at Johnny, actually. There were steps towards a solution. You're right in that there are much, much bigger issues than the Sabbat and the Camarillan going on, even though the Camarillan and the Sabbat are no less dangerous or problematic, and even though the Sabbat is an issue because they will slaughter everything and everyone, but there are those with foresight who asked me to find a way to step forward to a future without the masquerade, a future dealing with Gehenna and what comes after. And the steps to that were to introduce Jan Peterzoon and someone who would know more about the eldest and fighting against it, and to connect those two pieces together to get the two irreconcilable halves to see a future towards fighting this thing. But Jan Peterzoon's gone now, so now I don't know where we go. But in theory, there were steps forward. We don't have a plan to defeat an antediluvian, though we know they can die. We saw it, so, you know.
When did we see him die?
Ravana. I watched it. So did others. Ravana woke. That's when the shards of the eldest stirred. That's when other antediluvians stirred. When Ravana woke.
I also know one story wherein which an antediluvian met final death.
So
it is the origin of our blood. It is the tale of Troil and the annihilation she brought to her sire. I have something. He looks to one of the members of his army. Retrieve the weapon. They nod, and then they head over into the next room. Mere moments pass of quiet between you, before they return with this metal case that is set down on the table, kind of unceremoniously right over the files that are strung about the tabletop. And he opens it. It is called the Blade of Enoch. Some call it the Sword of Troya. And when he opens it, he reveals a weapon that looks to be a very old bronze-pitted short sword. It's about the size of a gladius, even relatively similar in shape, but much more crude and old. It is said that the weapon hungers for the blood of Bruja, and any who are descended from Troy can be vanquished by it. I took it from my sire when I thought she was destroyed. She is obsessed with Troy and Carthage and the histories of our blood. He closes the case. I do not know if it was truly possessed by one such being, but I admit, he says, struggling to form the words, much of this seems a bit beyond me.
You're not the only one, Your Grace.
I mean, we all get there in our own time. And saying it outside of this room is a death sentence from the Camarillan. But it is Gehenna now. It's the end times. So that as a first step to acceptance is, I find, I don't know, comforting is the wrong word. But
how is this stopped? What useful information do you have on this matter?
How is Gehenna stopped?
What actionable details do you have?
We've been taking it a piece at a time when we could. We are aware of two things at this point. One is the eldest, and it must be stopped before it rises.
When will it rise?
When you siege New York.
I think these kinds of things are imprecise, but that's what I saw.
And if I don't?
Then we all die to the Sabbat. I don't know. It's kind of a lose-lose scenario.
Well, can you talk more about why you think that it'll happen when the siege happens? Is it disturbing the kindred in some way?
So, I saw a fight in New York. I saw His Grace fighting against the Cardinal Polonia and someone else, some other La Sombra. I can't remember their name. They were also there, important. I think when I saw it that way, I think I was the Vikos, but I don't know if that's... I might be projecting into that one. I'm not sure. But as the fighting was happening, the dragon rose. And that is... I mean, the dragon rising is... A dragon rising is one of the signs of Gehenna. So I don't know if you can stop Gehenna, but if you can, I would say... But for me, my guess would be if you can stop the signs from happening. Right? Most of them have already happened. Some... debatably.
What are the signs of Gehenna?
Oh, God. Neil starts to count on his fingers and then sort of like moves some stuff out of the way and starts pointing at the fragments of the Book of Nod and like some of the things that Peterson was there and sort of points and taps at them as he talks. The fragments are all like weird and in different languages and whatever, but there's translation notes. And he just goes, okay, okay, so the Thin Bloods, right? The time of Thin Bloods, when the clanless rule and those who can't sire children exist.
His eyes narrow at that for some reason.
That is now, it's actually, that's why the Camarillan kidnaps, kills, gets rid of all signs of Thin Bloods and why princes hate clan lists so much and that kind of thing. I have sort of like a personal theory that it's not that there are so many thin bloods, it's that thin bloods die quickly, and it's actually the mass death of kindred. But that's sort of I'm going to try not to editorialize too much, but a lot of this has to do with prophecy. And
what are you aware of regarding the war on the West Coast?
Almost nothing. I don't know why. What's happening?
There are multiple Justicars deployed right now to the West Coast.
There's multiple Justicars on the West Coast?
Yes.
I don't.
Cities controlled by thin-blooded rulers.
Oh, yeah,
They're in open rebellion against the Camarillan.
Which makes sense. They've been left out to dry, and they're about as far away from Europe as you can get. Okay, well, that's just one. That's just one of the signs, right? That's the first one. Second, right? One of the other signs, supposedly, of Gehenna is that the wild ones, like werewolves. There's some debate, but werewolves, I think, they will hunt kindred, even, what is the quote? Even in their strongest cities, something like that. I say werewolves because I know we have seen werewolves hunting us in our cities.
There was a werewolf that came for me just a few days ago.
I've had eyes spot them within city limits.
And the Sabbat, you called that dog tagging, Johnny?
Literally, it's a Sabbat tactic during this big size to throw werewolves. So there you go. If you look at, some of the fragments of the Book of Nod and like sort of the commandments of Cain and stuff talk about what to do with werewolves, what to do if, like, I don't know, fairies or whatever are there, but so like in context, wild ones probably means werewolves. That's the okay, so there's that one. Awakening of some of the eldest. That's one of them. We literally saw that happen in Sri Lanka. And then when that happened, there was some sort of like resonant feedback or something, because then the eldest went nuts, or at least fragments of the eldest went nuts in the Chantry. And I know my clan had a little bit of a tough time, so to speak. So
there were other clans who had a hard time too.
Exactly. So that's happening. Let's see, what's the other one? Oh, the crone. Usually means like Baba Yaga, right? The crone will awaken and consume all. So I think everybody, we know about the Iron Curtain. We know about that. We don't have to talk about that one.
Why don't you tell us?
We're just sort of
Well, is it different than Smitsi's shard? Growing and consuming everything in the Chantry and...
To be fair, there's probably some debate about that, but the crone is usually means the Baba Yaga. That's what the people think, and that is this goes back into like Nosferatu lore, like old Nosferatu lore. In theory, she was asleep for a very long time, but Iron Curtain, literally, like, you can't get to Russia, and then you can't get out of Russia.
I've never tried to get to or from Russia.
Well, neither have I, but Nosferatu have.
Great, keep going.
Anyways, you can't, right? That was because of the rise of the Baba Yaga. So.
That's a sign of Gehenna?
Yeah. Well, not the Iron Curtain, but the Baba Yaga rising to consume. Well, Baba Yaga rising, that's one of the presumed signs of Gehenna. At least according to, he like shuffles some papers around and taps on one of them.
Let's go to the next sign.
Okay. Let's see. We're all familiar with this one probably. The Black Hand will rise and choke all who oppose it.
We've heard the phrase before.
I remember that one.
So that was probably, the...
Was that Urshulgi?
No. That's a different thing. No, Black Hand, the Sabbat, right? Like the Black Hand sort of infiltrating the Sabbat, although they lost a lot of their power base, but apparently they had so much power base in the Sabbat that by losing part of their own power base, it stalled the crusade. So apparently they were, stuck in there pretty high. Rise of the Black Hand, there's a couple Black Hands, right? So either way, Black Hand rising.
Britta, still wearing the self-consciousness and horror of earlier, kind of pulls her hand a little closer at that mention.
Two different signs of one, or rather, he kind of looks, this is for the first time, even though like he's always nervous around Pendragon, he looks nervous about bringing this next one up. So one of the signs is that those who drink of the heart's blood will flourish. Though that one goes into the rise of Urshulgi and everything that's changing in Alamut, where literally they are reclaiming all the heart's blood that they can. Broke the Tremere curse, and now they're going wild in a way they haven't in a long time.
Are they talking about the numbers of them will flourish, or those who partake of it will see success in ways
I mean, this is ancient fragments of ancient texts. It's all up for
I don't
scholastic
read the
debate.
language. I wasn't sure if there was context.
So the context can be a few things. If you want my opinion, what's going on in Alamut would be one sign of it, and then he looks shakily a little bit over back towards Pendragon again. Or we just open the doors to the flourishment of diablerie in the Camarillan, as at the same time the Sabbat are flourishing on the East Coast. Either way, no matter who you look at or blame, there's more diablerists running around out in the open now than there ever have been.
Next point.
So we already sort of talked about this. A dragon rises. Could mean a few things, but I'm a little stuck on the eldest.
Being that we have now literally seen a dragon.
Unless we have another dragon who's rising to supremacy close at hand.
What was the symbol for the Coldenists?
What?
There was something about the Coldonic sorcerers are coming. They're infernalists. Or something like that.
Oh,
what's their clan symbol? I know they're Tzimisce adjacent.
Well, they're Tzimisce, I think, aren't they? Or
it's a dragon.
It's a dragon, yeah. It's
okay, so maybe that's a reference.
Could be that too. I don't know.
And your name's fucking Pendragon. Let's not forget that. Johnny kind of says with a sneer as he then pulls out a Morley, pops it in his lip, and lights up.
Fair.
Britta kind of peeks ruefully at Johnny. And is maybe catching herself on that instinct to be whoa, that was like you said something disrespectful, but she's pulling back.
To be fair, Pendragon started that train.
So we got dragons everywhere. What else?
The next two I haven't been able to pin down as well. One is A Darkness Moves. That could be the La Sombra or something along those lines. It could just be the flourishment of the La Sombra. It could be literally that the Sabbat are moving up the East Coast and, they're primarily made of La Sombra, or there's a lot of them at least, and they're it could be a lot of stuff.
Mass extinguishing of life.
What if it was Marcus Vitel?
He's a La Sombra.
He's a Ventru.
No.
Oh, you're right.
But Ventru running around without tenebration, that's nothing.
I mean, if the darkness
might be something to do with
flourishes.
tenebration, much like the Tzimisce's flesh crafting.
Could be. I don't know. The problem with something like A Darkness Moves is it a physical darkness? Is it a metaphorical darkness?
Not a lot of information there.
Not a lot of information on that one. The last one, maybe less information. I don't know. An angel dies. So that one could be... I mean, first of all, do they mean an angel? Do they mean a fallen angel? Do they mean it I don't know, but if it's dead, how do you kill an angel? I don't know the answers to those questions. But if an angel dies, or maybe it's angel means pure soul, right? Maybe there are people that we know or the last hope of whatever, and then they die and that's it.
Right.
I don't know. That one I don't know. But those are the signs, at least from the fragments that I'm aware of and the reading I was doing.
Wynn, that one seems to sucker punch Wynn a little bit. She thinks really hard about that one. And it hurts to think about.
Again, it could be.
I get it. We are awash in signs of Gehenna as according to the Book of Nod. But they're pretty fucking vague.
Prophecy. That
We can point to any number of things going on in the world and say that's what that is. What does this fucking mean? I know Gehenna is this thing that we have all been scared of for as long as I have understood vampire society. What happens if it is Gehenna?
Depends on who you ask. This is where we start getting into philosophical and theological debates.
Not really. We know what happens if Tzimisce rises.
Well, everybody dies.
We saw what happens at the Chantry, the spreading of that orange mold, the bodies folding in on each other.
That's
The only other thing that we're aware of is a prophecy involving Davenport.
the Thin Bloods and those who can't
As
create children.
in this treatment of this one person supposedly reflects back upon vampire kind in general.
Guess we'll find out.
And that saving her and preserving her will do the same for us.
Who is her?
Just like with all prophecies, they all kind of... There are multiple points towards the future that you could find. It's
She's referenced as the last daughter of Eve.
up for speculation what that means.
How do we find her?
What do we do with her when we find her? I mean, there's a lot going on with all of this. And, you know, we're trying our best here. We really are. But this is the...
Anyways.
Moving forward.
Johnny's jaw is pretty much locked out at this point. I think it would probably be safe to say that he is not good at necessarily keeping a straight face about things. Anyone who's looking at him can tell that he is just kind of locked-jawed and stiff-looking.
So we must fight the eldest and figure out a way to take it out. And that involves meeting with somebody that knows how to fight it.
The Angel of Cain.
The Vikos.
Yeah. Hell, maybe the Angel of Cain is the angel that dies. I don't know.
Let's stay on topic here.
It was not foreseen, foresighted. Those with foresight, a little prognostication, wanted Jan Peterson specifically. Why him? Well, I think I know why. He sort of gestures at all the shit that's on the table as a representative of the Camarillan and the Angel of Cain, the Vikos, needed to sit down and talk. That was all that sort of kind of all the direction I got here. But it was thought that if anybody could get at least portions of the sects to realize that none of this matters, all this sect war shit, jihad, none of it matters. Because it's Scanna, it's the end times. And together, there was a way beyond what we are now. He looks back at Pendragon. If you're asking, what do we do? How do we stop it? I don't know if we can. For me, it's looking at what comes next, if there's a next. And thinking beyond where we are right now. For those of us who are capable of thinking beyond what we are right now. And the thought was to get Jan Peterson and the Vikos to talk. Now, how we did that, I don't know. I know they were, originally going to both be there in New York.
Talk and agree to a ceasefire?
Yeah, I don't. It's beyond a ceasefire, because the problem is the Sabbat are also coming, and they are also Sabbat, and they are also going to slaughter everyone and destroy our humanities and burn everything that we love.
Right, we got it.
So, it's not like the Camarillan is not going to do that too.
So,
Just a different way.
hypothetically, I think the plan was if you can turn the Sabbat and the Camarillan against the eldest, there can be a mutual victory in that. And then that will, in and of itself, lead to a ceasefire.
We see what comes next.
It has to be smaller than that. There's no way that hundreds upon hundreds of kindred throwing themselves at the eldest is going to be the answer.
That's not, but the Vikos is the oldest Tzimisce that I'm aware of, or at least one of the most frightening. It would have to know something.
So we need to talk to the Vikos.
Any meeting with the Vikos, first thing will be treason against the Camarillan.
I'm aware.
But secondly, more importantly, will not be viable until the siege is resolved.
Which will be too late.
Why would
Not
talking to
necessarily.
it be treason?
Because it is the Vikos, one of the founders of the Sabbat. To associate it with it at all especially on matters pertaining to the end times,
Yeah.
is going to be something the Camarillan kills you for. Or that you are sent to kill others for, Archon.
She very much closes her eyes and holds onto her hands like she wants to point at him dramatically and like announce the gigantic hint that he has dropped. But she knows that her body will seize up. And she knows that it will be all for nothing. So she just stops.
So you're saying to get through the siege, Pendragon?
No, I'm not saying for you to get through the siege. I am saying do not attend it. Go elsewhere. There are locations that can be arranged. But if you go to the siege, you will not survive to the meeting with Vikos. And though there are some of you who already realize that to go is to die, you are unwilling to abandon your friends. Or so it seems.
Britta's bowing her head. That act of avoidance would indicate her as who he's speaking about.
What's your plan, then?
If this thing can be killed, I will kill it. But there are no efforts pertaining to this matter that survive the Sabbat.
I might have more information, but I haven't had time to go find it.
I was hoping that the group of you might have a bit of knowledge that could be carried to New York. Something that could be put to use.
If we did have knowledge of something that might pertain to New York.
Then it would be used.
By you?
Yes, that is what I've been getting at.
I'm not sure where you stand on all of this right now. You have told us that you've murdered Jan Peterson. You've unfurled a table full of contraband material to the Camarillan. What side are you on here?
The side that makes me most honest. The one side that I can trust. Mine.
Our problem lies in when another deal is made. Which one of us will become expendable at that point?
All of you.
Yeah.
I meant to him.
4 out of 5 of us.
Let him talk.
To me, it is simple. The group of you know the most about this, and in theory, are the most valuable assets in dealing with it. So long as that is true, I see no reason to cast you aside. But let's make sure it's true.
There's a place, right, Miles, in New Haven, that we were going to go. We were going to try and learn more what could kill this thing. We haven't had a chance to, because of, frankly, because of the Camarillan and all the things that have been going on. Building support, the Sabbat, the trials, the conclaves. We just had 3 damn nights. We could get more. But
Her power is going to take every step she believes necessary to keep you from knowing more.
We might have a way. A solution that is untested and unorthodox. But we don't have the time to do it.
What is the solution?
There are individuals who possess powers and insights that we don't completely understand, who are hell-bent on fighting this.
Who are they?
We know of them.
Who are they?
And what are you going to do with that information?
Use it.
It's, when it... I understand you desire to be, honest, Prince Pendragon, but in matters of espionage, there's a just car upstairs. I don't think it's for the best.
I'm not convinced she isn't going to simply walk you to your deaths as soon as we're done here.
She might.
So I want that information now.
Well, it's in your best interest for us to not die, then.
And honestly, Your Grace, after the rave, I just don't fucking trust you.
Johnny.
I see.
We want an ally. We don't want somebody who will throw us away once we're done being inconvenient.
This meeting is done.
Agreed.
He closes the case. He collects the files. He points to his men. Escort them back upstairs. They head over and gesture to the doorway. Please, this way.
Neil takes a last look at the stuff on the table. Eyes lingering specifically on those fragments that they took from Shaw, what feels like fucking forever ago. And then turns and starts following, like, sort of shuffling really quietly.
He looks at Pendragon. If you want in on this fight, we need to know you're with us. Not just as tools. He gives him a nod and leaves the go with as directed.
Britta looks... She's trying to hide the emotional mess. She looks torn, self-conscious. She looks like she wants to argue with Johnny. She looks like she doesn't know how. Clearly, her mind is racing a mile a minute, and she doesn't know how to express any of it. And she sees everything splitting.
Is the guard still with us?
Yeah, he's going to bring you over to the elevator, help you on, help you off.
Wynn purposely keeps eyes and body and mouth shut. Eyes are focused, unfocused, but getting her where she needs to go. She's of her own volition and with some motivation, not of her own volition, had to keep quiet about an awful lot, and there's just nowhere to trust and nowhere to have an honest conversation about any of the things that just happened.
Path of Night is a Vampire the Masquerade podcast set in the world of darkness. Britta Ashcroft the Toreador was played by Rebecca Steigelfest. Johnny Saxon the Bruja was played by Garrett Gabbey. Miles Davenport the Venture was played by Tim Davis. Neil Foster the Malkavian was played by Rob Muirhead. Wynn Cabot the Gangrel was played by Erika Webb. Your storyteller was Lex Lopez. Recording by Rebecca Steigelfest. This episode edited by Rob Muirhead. The music used in this episode was composed for Path of Night by Brian Matolius. Find him online at brianmatolius.com. Path of Night uses the 20th anniversary edition of Vampire the Masquerade with a few limited house rules. Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness are owned by Paradox Interactive. Make sure to subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We can be found on YouTube at youtube.com/@pathofnight. You can help support the show on coffee.com/pathofnight. Find us on twitter.com/pathofnightpod, on facebook.com/pathofnightpodcasts, or email us at pathofnightpodcasts@gmail.com. See you next time, kindred.
It just so happened that the person with 0 blood in their system frenzied and tried to eat somebody, and that's just a thing that happens.
A perfectly reasonable activity.
Yep.
Wynn watches Johnny refuse the blood dolls.
You know what would have been interesting about that? Is that had Johnny frenzied and fucking drained this girl, he would have gotten 0 vitae.
Why?
Prey exclusion.
Prey exclusion.
Oh,
He literally doesn't get anything out of this.
Oh, I didn't realize you were as
I
screwed
didn't
as
know you had prey
Miles.
exclusion.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Interesting.
No, he's opposite.
Yeah.
everyone's like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? Johnny, how come you're not feeding? It's like, I can't do anything.
Well, not only that, but I mean, there's a reason why he won't, but
Right.
it's like, it's personal.
Yeah.
I did not actually know that you had that on your sheet.
Yeah, I thought that was stylistic. I didn't realize it was mechanical.
Neat. Very cool. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Which would have been a fucking awful thing if he kills a girl and still is just looking like hungry.
Isn't it
and
such
fucking...
a great, little demonstration of why you and Pendragon are so fucking different?
I like that it's 5 years in. We're just learning about this flaw that's on his sheet.
Well, he's been acting it the whole time. But
Yeah.
Yeah.